This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad and live today. A friend of mine from one of my former congregations once confided in me and gave me a little insight into his family's home life. He said that the most tense time for the family during the week, the most combative moment, the most argumentative occasion where it seems as though the gloves are off and there's no holds barred, is Sunday morning getting the family ready for church. He said it was a constant struggle of wills getting the kids up out of their beds and dressed appropriately. He said that there was always something that he and his wife were squabbling about as they walked out that front door and to the car. He said that the five of them would be pushing each other's buttons and irritating one another as they sauntered through the church parking lot. All this discord would continue to bubble to the top of the pot as they approached the front door. Then poof, something magically would erase any and all frustrations that the family had as they passed through that door. Smiles would be plastered on the parents' faces as the kids ran off to Sunday school, giggling and laughing. Maybe some of you can relate. I personally find this to be a little ironic and rather funny, but I totally see where my friend is coming from, for I have on numerous occasions experienced something similar. How many of you have left to go to a friend's house for dinner and you and your significant other or you and your kids are just going at each other's throats? Everyone is totally stressed out. Everyone's irritable and everyone is squabbling and bickering as you get into the car. Squabble, squabble, squabble as you drive. Bicker, bicker, bicker as you arrive at the host's home. Squabble, squabble, squabble as you walk down the sidewalk. You go up and you ring the doorbell and you get in another quick bicker, bicker, bicker when the door opens and you exclaim to the host, "Hey, who's ready for some fun?" Again, you enter into that door and all is forgotten. What causes us to change our tune so quickly as we enter these doors? It's probably the shame and embarrassment of someone outside our family witnessing us arguing and fighting. We don't want to air out our dirty laundry in front of everyone. We don't need to expose our own weaknesses and frailties. We'd rather move on from those things that are dampening our days and move forward with an attitude of joy and laughter and kindness. We walk through that door, and somehow, some way, that attitude shifts in the direction of a better way of living. While this is a good example of interpersonal relationships and dynamics between people, we would short ourselves if we just boxed it in solely to include people. Because certainly we get in disagreements and arguments with our God. Sometimes when we are downright done with the situation we find ourselves in, we yell, we scream, we even curse God. We're furious. This isn't fair. Do something about my current condition there, God. Other times we're just downright defiant. We make our own decisions based on what's best for us and not considering how God would have us live. We fall to the temptations of greed and self-service. We come to that fork in the road and we choose that path over here that doesn't lead to God. We allow barriers and obstacles to be constructed, things that alienate us from the one who created us. In essence, we block God out of our lives. These all too familiar scenarios of sinfulness and defiance towards God are interesting in that they're all one-sided. Notice who the principal actor is here. I mean, yes, God gives us a directive and he plops a roadmap in our laps to follow, but we are the ones who ultimately make the decisions. We are the ones who are squabbling and bickering with God. We are the ones that choose to do what we want when we want to, no matter what consequences might rear its head on down the line. We're the ones causing all the friction, the strife, the dissension, and discord. And you know what? Here comes God to fix it. It is God who provides that magic door for us to walk on through so that we can leave it all behind and join him in his heavenly party. In the Gospel of John, Jesus is quoted as saying, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture." God sends his Son Jesus to be the mediator to the issues between us and God. Whatever hinders us from having a right and loving relationship, Jesus takes all that upon himself and he dumps it on the cross. He makes our wrongs right. He turns our sadness into joy. He collects all the ugliness that dwells within us and he just simply discards it. He takes the hollowness that's in our hearts and he makes it whole as he injects the very love of God found on the cross. To the disobedient behavior that we exhibit towards God, Jesus says, you know what? Enough. Enough. Let's get things back on track. Jesus is that door that we pass through to experience the forgiveness and righteousness of our God. Jesus does all this because he's our mediator. He is that sacrificial lamb that was sent to break down the walls and barriers between us and God. In the book of Hebrews, the author speaks of the early laws of the Israelites in regards to worship. He describes in detail all the regulations for worship and for the sanctuary and all the preparations that were made by the priests in order to offer correct and valid animal sacrifice to God. The author then contrasts that way of early worship with the new standard of sacrifice in Jesus Christ. Christ pours out not the blood of goats, not the blood of calves, but his own blood on the cross for you and for me, for an eternal redemption. Whether it's intentional or not, we are the ones who make the big mess in life. We're at fault. We are the ones who so-called spill the milk and then just let it sit there, dripping off the table onto the floor, waiting for someone else to come and clean it up. And like the old saying goes, there's no use crying over that spilled milk, because in this instance, it is Jesus who comes to do the cleaning up on our behalf. Jesus leaves no doubt or question as to our future standing with God. For those that seek to be reconciled with God, all it takes for us to place our trust and commitment in our mediator, when we do that, he will step in on our behalf. For Christ comes into this world to save sinners. Our weak and wavering faith needs strengthening. Bad habits need to be broken. Flaring tempers need to be subdued. Selfish hearts need to be softened. This can only take place if we yield and surrender ourselves to Jesus, instead of letting the old haunts of sin linger in our lives. The invitation to reconciliation and peace with God, it's there. Christ extends his arms in a wide embrace to each one of us to say to us, receive the riches of God's steadfast love. In other words, enter through the door and leave all the squabbling and bickering behind. Amen. Remember as you go about your day that yesterday is gone, tomorrow does not yet belong to you. So why not live today, knowing that you never walk alone? See y'all next week. Later.